Kindly make sure that your mobile phones are switched off. Thank you.
Yesterday we had 4 verses from the first sukta, the first mandala of the Veda, and therefore we had some inkling into what Sri Aurobindo calls the psychological interpretation of the Veda. But we can dwell a little on this question of psychological sense, psychological meaning, even what Sri Aurobindo calls symbolism. The one example that we took was Kireet. This is a word which we emphasized yesterday while describing the nature of Agni. And we said Agni is Kireet. And Sri Aurobindo points out that Sayana, who is interpreting in a ritualistic manner, translates this word Kireet as one who is active in the ritual. Kratu is the active, and Kavi is the one who knows rituals or who is engaged in rituals, and says Kavi Kratuhu is one who is active in the ritual. And Sri Aurobindo, when he translates, he says Kavi Kratu means whose will toward the action is that of the seer. There it is active in the ritual, that is one ritualistic interpretation. The same word Sri Aurobindo says, one whose will towards action, that is Kratu, will towards action, is of that of a seer, Kavi. Not one who is engaged in ritual. It makes a lot of difference, one who is active in ritual and one who is a seer. One who is active in ritual can be also a mechanical action. Perhaps even a robot can do, if it is programmed, a robot also can do active in ritual, the same ritual to be repeated at certain timings, and it can be done by a robot. There is no psychological necessity in it. But a seer is quite different. You cannot make a robot a seer. It's a different dimension altogether. This is one example to show what is the difference between a ritualistic interpretation and a psychological interpretation. What is psychology? And why Sri Aurobindo calls his interpretation psychological interpretation? Psychology is understood in several different ways. There is in the West today a school of psychology which is called behaviorism. There is another school which is called Gestalt School of Psychology. A third is what is called functional psychology. A fourth is called structural psychology. And then there is a school which is called psychoanalysis, personalistic psychology. There are many schools of psychology in the West, and the word psychology therefore does not become very easily clear when we say psychological interpretation. But in the Indian context, psychology has been, you might say, the most prominent study right from the beginning to the present day, except at a given time in the intermediate period, the study of psychology became extremely poor. It is now again that we are to re-establish, as it were. In fact, today in the most of the universities, Indian psychology is still not being taught. What is taught is only Western psychology. And even in Western psychology, there is no certainty because of so many schools of psychology. The basic point is that there is a phenomenon of consciousness. This is the central point in psychology. The phenomenon of consciousness, and how the consciousness operates. This is the basic theme of psychology. Study of consciousness, study of the operation of consciousness, the study of states of consciousness, the study of different combinations that can be created in psychological components, analysis of consciousness, synthesis of the various elements of consciousness, utilization of these combinations, application of these combinations, and whatever results are obtained by the application, study of the results and trying to see whether some other results can be produced, higher results can be produced. In fact, this is the basic study whether Western psychology or Indian psychology. Both of them have this basic point. According to behaviorism, consciousness does not exist. All that is happening, what we call thinking, he says thinking is nothing but now speaking. It's a silent speaking. Speaking is a physical act. Now, according to behaviorism, there is no such thing as thinking as such. When you start speaking, mother tells you that this is this object, you repeat the word. Then afterwards you go on talking, whatever you think, they don't use the word thinking, whatever you talk, you go on talking. When a child learns a language, he goes on talking. One day father or mother says, I'll slap you now if you talk. So the child stops talking, but goes on silently talking within himself. This silent talking becomes more and more complex, and this is what we call thinking. Now this is the account that behavioral psychology gives of what we call thinking process. In India, however, when you read the text like the Veda, which is regarded as the oldest extant document in the world, not only in India, but the whole world, there is no text available in the whole world comparable to the Veda. And such a huge, it's not only at one stroke, you have got such a huge body of text. And if you read the Veda, you find that these composers of Veda must have not only studied psychology, but must have studied psychology to such a length and breadth and such height, such depth, that these concepts which are present in the Veda could come only when extraordinary experiments would have been carried out, which you can't even today imagine, and even today we are not ready to experiment upon. This is how this Veda has to be seen. If you regard Veda as a text which only tells you how to do yajna and what are the vidhis to be performed at given times, it will be still valuable. But if you can show that there are concepts in Veda which manifest a tremendous psychological understanding of the human consciousness, and not only as it operates here, but how it can operate at different levels of consciousness, which are even what may be called supreme levels. As I had said in the beginning, this concept, Satya Chitra Shavastama, is a psychological concept. And Sri Aurobindo said how ritualistically it can be brought down a lower level. Shavas, instead of thinking the Shavas in the real sense of Shruti, Sayana says Shavas means fame. So Agni is famous. To say that Agni is famous is one way of interpreting the same word. And Sri Aurobindo says Shavas is the inspired forms of knowledge. Now you see the distinction when you say Shavas is a word which indicates inspired forms of knowledge. I have given the example of great poets. Great poets, when they reach a state of inspiration, they don't fabricate words, they don't fabricate lines and expressions. All that is in the poetic formulation, rhythmic word, the vision, and the style, all the three are combined together in a poet of a high level, and when he utters even one sentence, all the three are present, combined together, the vision, the style, and the rhythmic word. The main distinction between prose and poetry is that in prose, you do not care for rhythms. This distinguishing feature of poetry is that it is rhythmic. Unless there is a rhythmic word, it is not poetry. It may be anything else. Even there are many good prose writers whose writings also have rhythmic form. Like Plato, for example. That is why his prose is called poetic prose. Because when you read his prose, you have the rhythm. There is a kind of beat. Now, a good poet does not try to see whether the beat is there or not. When he is inspired, the very word, it automatically flows out. That is the mark of a poet. He doesn't labor. He is inspired. He is so inspired, the word themselves begin to dance as it were, and they automatically take their place to express the vision that he wants to express. In Naran Damayanti of Vyasa in Mahabharata, when Nala disappears and Damayanti is left alone and she wakes up in the morning and she wakes up and says, Natha, Natha, Hadasmi, Vitasmi, Nashtasmi. Now these words, in a torrent, there is no effort. The psychological vision of a woman who gets up in the morning, doesn't find her husband and they cries out. This is the mark of a poet. This is Shravas. Now, the difference between calling Shravas a fame and say Agni is famous, and to say that Agni is capable of this kind of Shruti, this kind of capability of inspired expressions of visions of the highest truth. This is the difference. Now we know that in Veda there are all kinds of psychological terms that we come across. There is, for example, mati is a word which comes very often. Dhi is another word. Dhiyo yuna prachodaya, even in the Gayatri mantra. Medha, yam medham devaganaha pitarascho pasate, taya mamadya medha vinam kurusva. Now, this medha is a very prized capacity. And here there is no ritualistic interpretation possible because Veda is Veda and it is admitted that Vedic seers were aware of what is Veda. And then there is a real subtle understanding what is Dhi, Medha, Mati, Sumati, Sankalpa. All these are psychological terms. And these we find accurately given at the right moment. There is no confusion. As for example, we do make a distinction between sensation and perception. There is a, when somebody touches me, it's a sensation. When I see a cow, there is a sight which is a sensation. But when I perceive and recognize it as a cow, it's a perception. And then there is a conception. Sensation, perception, conception. Then there is a process of combination of conceptions, which we call reasoning. Reasoning is nothing but combination of so many concepts put together and put them in an order which is considered to be consistent. And the perception of the law of contradiction, law of identity, law of external middle, which are the normal laws of thought, and application of in the process of reasoning is a still higher process of understanding. And the highest concept that we can have, I told you yesterday of the ontological argument, that when you can see that the highest concept is the concept of God and the perception that God exists is the highest that we can have in intelligence. And I say that this is not all because the Veda does not stop at this point. It goes beyond conception. And then there are many faculties of which the Veda speaks. The Veda speaks of Ila, of Saraswati, of Mahati, of Dakshina. Now what are these? We don't have the time to go into details of these four faculties which are described in the Veda. And if you see what is written about them, surely they are not intellectual conceptions, they are direct perceptions and direct seizing of the truths. Now that we can seize the truths, we can seize it intellectually, but we can also seize it experientially. Now when you can seize the truth experientially, then there is a revelation. This is the power of Ila. It is corresponding to opening my eyes and I see and things are revealed before me. Similarly, Ila is a power which when it operates, it sees the truth directly. Now what is the difference between the truth of fact as I see it and the truth of which the Veda speaks? It's a very important concept, truth. Because when we were told that Agni is Satyaschitra Shavastama, the word Satya is very important. What is Satya according to the Veda? And as Sri Aurobindo has explained when we go in detail, and we shall see later on also, that Satya is expressed in the Veda by three words, Satyam, Ritam, Brihat. The normal grasp of objects, which may be an accurate grasp of objects, is a grasp of a fact. But we know that any fact seen in its isolation is corrected by the next perception that I may combine with it. When you combine many percepts or sensations or percepts together, then your apprehension of the fact becomes clearer. The simple example is of a blind man and the elephant. If you see only one aspect of the elephant, you may call it is a tree, or you may call it a small little thing, or the eyes and the ears and so on. Different things can be described individually. When you combine many percepts together, your perception of the fact becomes larger. Now when in the Veda word Satyam is pronounced, it has another meaning. It is first of all a perception of the vast. What is vast? The real physical experience of the vast is obtained